Please, Hans.
Emma slid the wooden frame away and a folded envelope fell into her palm. The paper was yellowed at the edges, creased as if it had waited there for months. She saw a date and a signature through the thin fold and felt suspicion rise, then settle into her chest like a stone. This was not an accident. Someone had planned this. She did not sit. She stood in the hallway, the photograph propped against the wall, and opened the letter with fingers that trembled but kept their grip. The first lines named a future she did not share. Airport codes, a week in October, a named hotel, and a line that read, "Start with everything arranged." Leave quietly. Emma read the signature twice. Her name did not appear, but Michael did, printed in the same handwriting as the grocery lists taped to the fridge. The sentence that followed, "I will go before she notices," was a direction and not a plan. It sounded like a promise to someone else. Suspicion steered her in that hallway, and she moved down it with a new attention to detail. The worn spot on the stair runner, the scuff by the front door, the small chip on the photo frame she had never noticed before. She carried the letter into the kitchen and set it on the table without unfolding it again. The kettle clicked off in the background. Sunlight pressed through the blinds and striped the table in a pattern that belonged to ordinary afternoons. Emma reached for her phone and typed without thinking. "Sarah, come over. I found something." Her thumb hovered before she sent the message. She read the word, found, and felt the second shift, doubt jittering into fear. She hit send. When Sarah arrived 15 minutes later, she came through the back door with her scarf half undone and a cup of takeout coffee in one hand. "Emma, what's wrong?" Sarah, dropping her bag and leaning against the counter. Emma set the envelope between them and opened it so Sarah could read, then watched her face for the changes that told a person was assembling a plan. Sarah read quickly, eyes scanning, then slowed. "Who kept this?" "Sarah, when did you find it?" "Emma, behind the picture frame. I was straightening the hallway for Michael's mother tonight." The sentence landed small but true. Sarah's jaw tightened. "You need to make him answer." "Sarah." She was practical in the way she always was. She listed next steps aloud. Copy the letter, photograph the date, ask Michael directly at dinner. Sarah's voice was the voice Emma trusted to turn fear into a task. The two women moved through the kitchen with a briskness that scattered no explanation across the floor. That movement was an emotion, shift from paralyzing suspicion to determined action. They did not wait long. Michael came home on schedule, coat folded over his arm, briefcase clicking against his hip. He kissed Emma's cheek with a politeness that had once felt like a small island and said, "Traffic was bad. Sorry I'm late." Emma watched him set his briefcase down, noticed the way his hand lingered on the handle, the watch glinting under the light. She waited until they all sat at the table. The meal sat between them. Roasted chicken, steamed green beans, Emma's nervous attempt at normalcy. She placed the envelope on the table where he could see it. "Michael," she said, and her voice did not shake as much when she forced it into the open. "I found this behind the family photo. I need to know what this is." Michael looked at the envelope, then at Emma. He avoided eye contact and ran a hand over his forehead. "Emma, he began. "Michael, is this about leaving?" Sarah cut in, leaning forward. "Michael, what's this October plan?" Michael measured his words. "It's not what it looks like," he said. "I am telling you it's not set. It was something I wrote down while I was thinking out loud." His tone was steady, the same baritone that smoothed over boardroom meetings. Emma felt a new shift. The doubt that had become fear now buckled toward anger. She heard her voice sharpen. "You wrote, start with everything arranged. Leave quietly." "That's not thinking out loud, Michael." The table narrowed around them. They argued in short bursts. Emma, "Calm, don't tell her to calm down." Michael, "Sarah, please." Michael, "Whose hotel? Whose name?" It was logistics, nothing more. Logistics for what? Michael's fingers tapped the table. His watch caught the light. He avoided saying the word that would split the room into two separate lives. The argument stretched until plates were pushed away and words had run their course for the moment. Michael retreated to the study to take a call he said was urgent. Sarah, she would go look for more proof. The next emotion shift moved her from anger to a precise, methodical focus. She thought of details. Receipts, itineraries, an old boarding pass in a coat pocket. In the study, the desk drawer was an obvious place to begin. She was careful. She did not search as a person ransacking, but as someone gathering evidence to hold between her hands. Under the desk mat, she found a small stack of envelopes. One had a hotel logo she did not recognize. Another held a plane ticket receipt torn at the perforation with a stamped time. 3 months prior. There was a handwritten note folded in tiny, deliberate script. Emma unfolded it and read, October 27th, flight out at 8. Room booked through the 14th. Finish accounts, leave a forwarding address. He will not see her coming. The sentence changed the angle of everything. This was not an unformed fantasy. It was a schedule. Emma stood in the study with the paper between her fingers and the house humming around her. The air felt ordinary, dishwasher cycles, the distant sound of a neighbor's lawnmower, but the ordinary noises only sharpened the facts. She heard her own pulse, counted it once, twice, and then went to the bedroom to gather a small bag. Packing was a practical action. It also produced another emotion shift, from methodical collection to a quiet resolve. She folded shirts the way she always did, placed the worn wedding band on the nightstand for a moment before deciding to leave it on. She could not tell which choice felt most final. She had not planned to move out that night, but she wanted to be ready to go. She left notes for herself on the bedside table, things to bring, names to call, small reminders that cut through the fog. When she heard Michael's step in the hallway, she folded the plane ticket receipt into her pocket and waited in the doorway. He paused when he saw the open suitcase. Emma, he said, and for the first time that night his voice carried a question that was not a statement. He came closer and the room felt suddenly tight. Why is your suitcase open? Emma did not answer with accusations at first. She said, Michael, I found a letter behind the photo. I found receipts. I found a note with dates and a plan. He swallowed. His eyes moved away. Emma, listen. Michael, did you plan to leave? She the words plainly. He pinched the bridge of his nose and paced, a small ritual he used when trying to think clearly. I was thinking about leaving for a while. Not like that. It was a thought. I wasn't going to hurt you. The sentence was an attempt at mitigation. It did not answer the evidence. Emma felt a quick spike of disbelief, then cold that tethered into a decision to press for named specifics. That shift, anger to interrogation, set the conversation into the mode it needed to be. They moved back to the study. Emma put the plane ticket receipt on top of the desk and slid the dated note next to it. Michael, tell me who knew about this, she said. Tell me who you were planning to go with and why you wrote, he will not see her coming. He stepped back and ran his fingers across the table as if smoothing the wood could erase the handwriting. There was someone at work, Michael admitted finally, a consultant. We discussed contingency plans if things went south with the firm. I didn't plan to, you wrote start with everything arranged, Emma interrupted, you wrote leave quietly. What contingency uses that language? Michael's defenses shifted. He tried to frame it as professional maneuvering. Sarah, when she re-entered the study after grabbing her coat, did not accept it. Michael, Sarah, this sounds personal. You wrote he will not see her coming. That reads like you were choosing how to step away from a relationship. Michael looked between the two of them, and then focused his eyes on Emma. I thought if I left quietly it would cause less damage. I thought I could fix things later. I was wrong. The room held his words and then released them into a new pattern of consequences. That admission did not solve anything. The night deepened. Michael's face worked through a few different outlines. Regret, then rationalizing, then something closer to fear when he realized proof could decide his fate as surely as his words. Emma watched his mouth shape explanations. She listened for omissions, she for clarifications and for names. He gave fewer than she wanted. Sarah filled the silences with practical questions, and the occasional sharp observation designed to make Michael uncomfortable until he could not hide in measured tones. When Michael finally left to take a call at the office, Emma stayed in the study and did not let the moment go. She returned the papers to an envelope and photographed them with her phone. She typed a single message to Sarah. "Bring the car keys. I want to sleep at your place tonight." There was no theatrical packing, no dramatic exit. She placed a fresh mug by the sink and then went to the front door and opened it. Outside, the street lay quiet under a faint mist. She could have left immediately. Instead, she went back to the study one more time and checked the top shelf of the bookcase. There she found another small thing. A receipt for a storage unit with a different name listed as the primary contact. The name on the receipt was not a firm's name. It was a man's name she had never heard. It came with a sticky note in Michael's handwriting. Move small leather items. Third week in November, the discovery twisted the direction of her suspicions into something wider. It suggested not only escape but an alternate life in parallel to theirs. Emma felt a surge of nausea and then a practical decision. She would not confront him without more specifics. She would not be the person who left herself with nothing but outrage. She called Sarah, met her in the driveway, and slid into the passenger seat of Sarah's small hatchback. Sarah drove them both away from the house with the envelope on Emma's lap. The drive kept their voices low and utilitarian. They named tasks. Lawyer consults, copies of the papers, a lock change if necessary. At Sarah's kitchen table, Emma spread the documents and made a list of phone numbers to call. Each entry she wrote tightened her jaw a degree. She kept returning to the line in the note. He will not see her coming. She wanted to know who he was talking about. The question became a second mini cliffhanger in the night. Was the her someone at work, a neighbor, another woman entirely? The unknown gnawed at her. They did not have long before Michael called. He to come by to talk. Emma yes, and set a condition. They would talk in the study with the documents visible. When he arrived, the house smelled faintly of the lemon cleaner they used on Sundays. He did not knock. He stepped in and paused at the threshold long enough for Emma to count his breaths. Her hands were steady on the envelope, and the receipts laid like proof between them. The confrontation began with short sentences and quick exchanges. "Michael, tell me where October flight goes." Emma demanded, "Who is the room under?" "Emma, I told you. Name the person you were planning to go to." "It was not a person to go to. It was a plan to get away." "Michael, name them now." He gave a name that did not fit the neat categories Emma expected. His name is David. He helped with an account. I didn't think it meant anything. Sarah leaned forward. "Michael, who is David?" "A consultant." "An old client. Did you promise to meet him?" "Yes, in October." The first shock of the argument rattled their pace. Rapid lines followed. "Michael, did you book the flight?" "I didn't. He book it." "I booked the room and reserved the possibility." "Michael, why would you reserve without telling Emma?" "Because I thought I could manage it alone." "Manage what?" "The idea of leaving so things didn't break in front of who?" "In front of you, Emma." "I thought leaving quietly was less cruel." The exchange pushed at the core of trust and left open a wound that would not close with excuses. Then came the unexpected shift. Emma found a sentence in Michael's speech that admitted something different. I was scared of telling you because I didn't know if you would make me stay out of guilt. I didn't want you to feel trapped by my apology." That line moved the emotional frame. From accusation to an attempt at explanation that hinted at guilt and cowardice all at once. Emma felt bitter and then resolved. Sarah's tone hardened into practical insistence. Emma, you have to hear names, dates, faces. Sarah, Emma, you deserve specifics. Emma nodded. She Michael for the storage unit address and the full name listed. He hesitated and then provided it. When Emma checked the address on her phone, the storage company listed a unit rented under David Haynes' name with a secondary name that matched a surname Emma recognized from a recent charity gala Michael attended alone. The twist tightened around an already raw night. This was not just a contingency plan. It connected to mentions she had brushed off. At that point, the argument reached its height. Michael's posture changed. His face flushed in certain spots. His voice lost the careful moderation it had tried to keep. Emma's pain translated into short, hard questions. Sarah interjected with facts and demands that forced Michael toward admissions. That he had spoken with David about options, that arrangements had been discussed, and that he had planned a departure window. He refused to say if there was another romantic partner. That refusal widened the gap between them. Then Emma made a move that surprised both men. She picked up the phone and called the storage facility while Michael watched. She for confirmation of the names on the rental agreement. The voice on the other end confirmed David Haynes and a secondary name. Caroline Miles. The name hit with the weight of specificity. Emma, Michael, do you know Caroline Miles? He looked away and said, no. Not really. The lie was thin. The conversation shifted again when Emma demanded to know what was in the storage unit. Move small leather items. She read aloud from Michael's sticky note earlier. What does that mean, Michael? It meant practical things, boxes, paperwork, a suitcase. I did think. Sarah's hand tightened into a fist on the table. Michael, you don't get to keep ambiguity now, she said. You gave us proof. You gave us dates. You gave us names. His defenses began to break. He tried to frame it as fear and confusion. Emma felt her own fear harden into clarity about next steps. Michael's next reply contained a fragment that shifted everything. He admitted that he had met Caroline once at a networking event, and that conversations about leaving started there. He had thought the connection was harmless at first. Emma heard the words and felt a sudden contraction in her chest, an inner tremor between disbelief and a fury sharpened by betrayal. When did the conversation become plans? He answered, a few months ago, she repeated. A few months ago, the timing matched the date on the plane, ticket receipt, and the letter behind the frame. The pattern closed into undeniable form. There was an eruption of rapid back and forth, then 3, 4, 5 short lines that collided. Michael, did you love her? Emma, I didn't. Did you intend to leave me? I intended to get away from what I couldn't fix. From what? From me. From the idea of failing. Michael, you failed by hiding it. The exchange was sharp and immediate, and in those lines the chapter pushed toward its climactic moment. Michael tried to salvage the night with promises, with explanations that moved between contrition and plea. Emma, I can make this right. I can see a counselor. I can stop contact with David and Caroline. I will do whatever you want. Emma listened and then named a list of immediate, concrete conditions. Transparency with accounts, a pause on travel, a joint counseling appointment in 2 days, and no contact with the storage unit until they both could inspect its contents. The words without flourish. They were tasks and boundaries, not speeches. But the peak came when Michael, backed by the evidence on the desk, reached for a different tactic. He stepped forward and put his hand on her arm. Emma, please don't go tonight. Let's talk tomorrow. Let me explain fully. Her response was physical. She tightened her grip on the envelope and drew back. That instant, the hand touching the arm, the near supplication, was the emotional apex. Emma's reaction folded into a short sequence of actions. She rose, packed the small bag she had prepared earlier, and took the car keys from Sarah's hand. Sarah helped with the packing without questions that night, her movements efficient. A jacket, a toothbrush, a few shirts folded and placed into the duffel. Emma, You can stay at my house as long as you need, Sarah. Emma nodded. The final plea from Michael came on the front steps as they were leaving. He moved from the threshold toward her and said, Emma, please. Tell me what to do. Tell me how to fix this. Her answer was not a speech. She looked at him for a long, steady moment and then said, Michael, you have to stop making plans without me. Start by telling me the whole truth. Now he hesitated and then began to speak, fumbling with details. His words filled the dawn air but did not close the gap. Emma stepped into Sarah's car with the duffel at her feet. She closed the door and felt the click of the lock like a punctuation mark. Sarah started the engine and pulled away from the curb while Michael stood on the porch watching them go, his shoulders slumped. The envelope rested on Emma's lap the whole ride. She did not open it again. Dawn light flattened the street into colors she had always known, but now they seemed arranged around a new fact. The marriage contained plans made without her consent. At Sarah's kitchen, they laid out the documents and made phone calls. They drafted an email to Michael asking for a full list of dates and contacts related to the receipts and the storage unit. Emma typed with steady hands. Each sentence she wrote was a choice to insist on specifics rather than let explanations blur into vague regret. The night had moved her through suspicion, fear, and anger into a hard practicality that would shape the next days. She set the phone down, folded the envelope, and put it into a small box with the receipts. That small, precise action felt like taking back a measure of control. Before she slept, Emma texted Michael 2 short lines. I need the full list by noon tomorrow. No surprises. She left the message unsent for a moment and then hit send. The message was not a threat. It was a boundary. Sarah made coffee at 2 in the morning and listened while Emma read the letter aloud again, line by line. The reading was not for sentiment. It was for verification. Each sentence confirmed a pattern. In the first light of morning, Emma stood at Sarah's back fence and watched her own neighborhood. She breathed in cool air and felt the ache under her breastbone, not a poetic weight, but a specific throb of hurt where trust had been eroded into transactions behind a frame. She kept repeating the dates aloud, marking them on a calendar with a pencil so they would be visible. The chapter closed on a concrete beat. Emma placed the small box containing the letter and receipts into Sarah's locked glove compartment and shut the compartment with a firm click. The click was an action that bound the night's discoveries to an immediate, practical safeguard. Outside, the house on the quiet street remained as it had been, with a porch light still on and the swing gently swaying in the breeze. Emma did not watch for Michael anymore. She sat at Sarah's table and made the next list. Lawyers, counselors, a locksmith, a note to change online passwords. She would not yet decide whether to end the marriage. She would insist on facts, on transparency, on an account of who had been told and who had not. The chapter ended with Emma closing the glove compartment, turning the key and saying, quietly, get some rest. We'll begin tomorrow. Emma yanked open Michael's briefcase and a narrow envelope slid out onto the office carpet. Suspicion hit her at once. She bent and picked the envelope up, fingers numbed by a sudden certainty. The ticket inside showed a departure 3 weeks earlier than their recent argument. A hotel reservation had Michael's name typed clearly across the top. She did not sit down. She herself to breathe, and she told herself to put everything back exactly as she found it. But she kept the ticket in her palm like a hot coin. Emma had found a folded paper behind the picture frame a week before. She still had the memory of that yellowed letter pressing at the back of her mind. Now the briefcase added dates that matched the older note. Suspicion shifted into a sharper fear. Someone had planned an exit. Emma closed the briefcase gently and forced herself to walk out into the corridor as if she belonged there. She kept the envelope inside her sweater and moved toward the elevator. The receptionist at the front desk looked up as Emma passed. Emma, the woman said. Hi, Clara. Emma replied, voice held steady. Clara's eyes flicked to the bulge at Emma's midsection. Are you okay? You look pale. Emma smiled too quickly. I am fine. Just grabbing something I left in Michael's office. She kept her back straight and said Michael's name the way people repeat a fact. She had rehearsed nothing. Clara stood and walked a few steps toward the elevator. You sure? I saw you go in. People are asking. Emma felt her mouth dry. She kept the envelope folded in her hand and let her thumb press it flat. Yes, I found what I needed. Tell them I'm at a meeting. She turned and walked faster. Outside the elevator, Emma pressed her back against the cool metal and let the doors hum shut behind her. She tasted iron on her tongue. Fear moved behind her ribs like a small animal. She thought of Michael's neat shirts lying folded in their closet at home. She thought of the worn wedding band that caught light when the two of them ate breakfast together. She thought of the letter behind the frame. When Emma reached Sarah's small kitchen 20 minutes later, she did not wait to set the envelope on the table. Sarah put down a mug and scooted in her chair. Show me, Sarah. Emma slid the ticket and the hotel booking across the surface. She watched Sarah's face the way she watched a test develop. Sarah's hands went for the papers as if to hold a wound steady. This is dated 3 weeks ago. Sarah, that's before your fight last month. Emma tapped the printed date. It matches the letter behind the photo. He planned this earlier than we thought. Sarah nothing for a moment. Then we get more. We done tell him. Not yet. They made a plan without theatrical language. Sarah called a mutual friend who worked in it and asked for help checking shared entries. Emma opened their laptop at home that afternoon and typed in the calendar password that Michael always let her use. Her hands did not hesitate now. Suspicion had tightened into a need to know. The shared calendar had travel blocks with Michael's initials. Some entries were marked private, but the email histories showed echoes. Confirmation numbers, billing addresses, a prepaid counseling receipt that bore a woman's name. Emma found a chain of reservations that started months earlier. She printed itineraries and receipts until the printer tray sizzled and the pile of paper shivered on the dining table. Emma paced as she stacked the papers. Heat rose in her chest and her fingers kept folding corners. Fear tilted toward anger. She could sense the exact moment where calm folded away from her face and a new decision took its place. The plan they had hatched at Sarah's kitchen narrowed into one outcome: confront him with facts in a public place where witnesses existed. At 5:30, Emma intercepted Michael in the office parking lot. He had just locked his car. He looked at her as if she had stepped out of the regular schedule. He was wearing a navy jacket and the leather watch she knew would be visible when he reached for his keys. Michael. Emma. She held up a printed itinerary so that the late light cut across the small airline logo. Michael blinked. He kept his voice even. Emma. What's this about? Why did you book flights? She asked. Why is there a hotel reservation under your name 3 weeks ago? Michael glanced around, then at her. Emma, we can talk at home. Not here. He moved his hand as if to close the exchange. Greg, the office manager, was unlocking a nearby door and paused when he saw them. He walked over. Everything okay? He said. Greg, do you remember seeing Michael leave early 2 weeks ago? Emma quickly. Greg frowned. I thought he had a client meeting. He's something about travel. Which client? Emma pressed. She kept the itinerary between them. Michael reached for the paper. Emma, give me that. Please. His hand brushed the printout and his fingers trembled. Stop, Michael. Emma, don't touch it. Tell me the truth now. Michael's voice tightened. Emma, not in the lot. Later, no, she answered. Now, they went back and forth in short lines. The exchange sped and tightened until it felt like one of those small, contained storms that leave glass rattling. Michael spoke with a practiced calm that read like evasion. He the word opportunity, he the word needs, I didn't want to hurt you. He refused direct answers to the clear documents in her hand. A coworker walked past and looked at the papers on Emma's palm. The presence of others pressed on Michael's posture. He said less and chose his words. Greg watched, then asked softly, "Do you want one of us to give you privacy?" Emma folded the paper and looked at Michael. "I have the plane ticket, Michael. I have the hotel details. I have a receipt with a woman's name and a prepaid counseling address." "Explain it." She kept her sentences clean and small. Michael swallowed. "Emma, I didn't know how to tell you. I'm sorry." He kept searching for a refuge behind his measured tone. Emma felt fear turn to incredulous cold. She heard Sarah's voice in her head. "We get more." She knew she would not accept half answers here. Back in Sarah's car 10 minutes later, Emma and Sarah spread the folder Michael had dropped during the scuffle on the back seat. The receipt bore a woman's name they did not know. The prepaid counseling address was in the city district 3 towns over. This changes things. Sarah, it could mean someone else. Or it could mean planning to fix a problem outside the house. Emma's hands shook. It could mean anything. Sarah looked at her. "Then we find out. We follow the trail. We don't speculate." They decided to keep the receipts in a folder labeled evidence and to find a lawyer contact. Emma called a lawyer recommended by a colleague. The lawyer's voice was calm and professional. "Keep copies. Don't confront him alone and document everything." The list of simple instructions felt like a map. At dusk, Emma returned home with a small, heavy feeling in her chest. The house looked the same. The vase with tulips on the counter, Michael's coffee mug on the sink, the framed family photo on the mantel. Every ordinary object now read like a code she could not yet crack. She placed the printouts on the kitchen table, where the living room light pooled. Michael was at the sink turning a dish with slow movements. He spoke without looking at her. "You relate." His hands were steady. "Where were you last weekend?" "Emma." She kept the itinerary face up between them. Michael set the dish down. "Emma, please, not here. Greg, you were traveling for work. The files say you booked a room under your name. There's a prepaid counseling receipt with a woman's name." "Tell me the truth." Michael looked at the papers. He shut his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his control showed small cracks. "I hadn't planned. I didn't know how to leave," he said. "It wasn't an affair like you think, Emma. I thought if I arranged things, if I had options, it would make sense to leave cleanly without making you fight for explanations." He exhaled. "Options for what?" "Emma," Michael ran a hand through his hair. "A new job in another state. Some counseling appointments I thought I might need before leaving. I was planning the logistics so I wouldn't make promises I couldn't keep." Emma placed her hand flat on the itinerary. She felt the paper's ridges under her palm. "Did you ever intend to tell me?" she asked. Michael's voice dropped. "I thought I would. I was afraid of hurting you, Emma. I thought it would be easier to set things in motion and then explain. Easier." Emma's laugh came out small and sharp. "You put tickets in a briefcase and a receipt for counseling, Michael. You hid it from me. You made a plan without me." Michael's jaw tightened. He avoided her gaze. "I didn't want an argument. I didn't want to watch you ask me to stay because you felt trapped. I wanted to keep my reputation, Emma. I wanted to leave with less damage." Emma counted to 3 silently. Her hands closed and opened. She remembered the first letter behind the frame and how it felt like someone had chosen the words before she could name them. Betrayal moved through her limbs like a cold water. They argued in quick bursts, 3 to 6 short lines back and forth. "Why did you tell me? Why would you plan this alone? I didn't know how to say it. You hid receipts and flights. I wanted to protect you." From what? From knowing. Each exchange exposed more of the shape of what had been kept. Michael tried to explain logistics. Emma responded with dates and printouts. The kitchen light made the paper edges sharp. His explanations kept falling into phrases and hedges that did not answer the concrete questions. When he said, "I didn't want to hurt you," she heard a rehearsed line. Sarah arrived after a call from Emma. She came into the kitchen without hesitation, hands on her bag strap. "Emma," she said. "Tell me." Emma showed Sarah the receipts and the hotel reservation. Sarah read each line, then looked up. "Michael, why would you book counseling under someone else's name?" she asked. Michael's face tightened further. It was supposed to be private. "I wasn't sure what I needed." "Private from whom?" Sarah pressed. Her voice had a bluntness left over from growing up in a house where truth solved things. The confrontation turned harder when Emma produced the new receipt they had found in the folder dropped in the lot. "This has a woman's name and address for prepaid counseling. Emma, who is she?" Michael's mouth closed. He stared at the table. "She's someone from the office I met at a conference. We spoke. Nothing happened. I booked counseling because I thought I needed help deciding. I didn't sleep for weeks." Emma's throat tightened. She could feel each breath. "So you lied by omission and then tried to make it sound like therapy was the problem." Michael's voice became small. "I owned that choice. I should have told you." "I'm sorry." The kitchen filled with a different silence, no longer background, but the sound of pages shuffling and shoes on tile. Emma's decision hardened like a shield. She stood and moved to the foyer. She opened a small closet and pulled out an overnight bag they kept for guests. She started folding a few items into it. Her hands were sure. Her movements spoke a resolve that sounded like finality even if it wasn't yet. Sarah moved to help and said, "Call your lawyer now, Emma. Make sure you document everything." Emma nodded once. She dialed the number she had saved from the earlier call. Her voice when she spoke to the lawyer was clipped and businesslike. "Name, Emma Parker. I have evidence I need to preserve. I would like immediate advice." The lawyer gave instructions. "Change passwords, make copies, don't sign anything tonight, don't burn bridges." The legal voice in the phone clarified steps into action. Michael watched her pack. He reached out and then stopped. He did not touch her. "Emma," he began. "Don't," she said. She folded a sweater and placed it inside the bag. "Don't step closer, Michael." "Not tonight." He watched the bag fill and the house contract into a small area between them. The tulips on the counter were beginning to nod. The photograph on the mantel faced the room, its glass unbroken. Sarah carried the evidence folder to the car. "I will stay with you," she said. "We'll go through everything tomorrow." Emma closed the bag and slipped her wedding band onto a finger and then off again, setting it into the bag as if testing weight. She breathed once and slid the strap over her shoulder. She paused in the doorway. "One more thing," she said. "You need to tell me whether you ever intended to come back." Her voice was quiet but precise. Michael looked at her, and for the first time his control showed a jagged edge. He swallowed. "I didn't know." That answer was not a confession. It was a fracture. Emma nodded as if that broken syllable had given her the map she needed. She stepped onto the porch with the bag at her feet and closed the door behind her. The lock clicked. Sarah adjusted the strap on Emma's bag and then shut the car door. Emma sat in the passenger seat and felt the car's leather warm underneath her. She set the folder of documents on her lap and smoothed them with one hand. The paper lay in front of her like a set of instructions and accusations. As the engine started, the headlights carved a thin rectangle on the house. Emma kept her eyes on the glowing rectangle until the car rolled away. She did not look back at the window where Michael stood. She let the sound of the engine grow and then fade. The night swallowed the driveway. Emma felt the emotion shift again, this time from angry resolve to a quiet, necessary detachment. She had chosen distance for the night. She had chosen to gather more facts. The folder was evidence and also a boundary. She texted Michael a single line before the car left the block. "We need space. I will talk when there is counsel." It was short and concrete. The car ride was full of small motions. Sarah reached for Emma's hand and then withdrew. She kept the conversation practical, asking about passwords, who could access accounts, and whether Emma wanted to file for temporary measures. They spoke in short sentences, legal names, dates, and steps. Each external event in the ride changed what Emma could do. At the end of the night, Emma sat on Sarah's couch with a single lamp on. She placed the folder on the coffee table and ran her fingers along the edge of the ticket. The earlier letter behind the frame remained inside her purse. She took it out and placed it beside the printouts. Seeing them together made the earlier discovery read as part of a pattern. The puzzle was now a map. Emma did not make a speech. She did not vow a new life. She made concrete choices. Call a lawyer, keep copies, sleep at Sarah's, change passwords, and refuse to be the only one holding explanations. She arranged her things into the overnight bag and taped an index to the front that read, in simple handwriting, important. The handwriting was hers, and it had the same small, sure letters she used when labeling things in the pantry. Around midnight, a text came from Michael. "Can we talk tomorrow?" Emma read it and set the phone face down. She did not answer. She slept with the bag beside the couch. Her sleep was short and full of waking. She counted the breaths and let each one be a practical unit of time. At dawn, she would contact the lawyer, and the lawyer would tell her what to do next. For now, the immediate fracture felt contained by the small actions she had taken. Outside, a car light swept across the street. Inside, the paper sat in a stack with dates and names. The chapter of that night closed on a concrete movement. Emma stood, picked up the folder, and walked to the window. She placed the folder on the sill and watched the lane for a moment. The window reflected her face clearly, and she adjusted the lamp so the room felt real and visible. Her choices for the next day were set in place. The domestic scene had changed because of a ticket and a receipt and a briefcase. The proof was physical. So was the demand that followed. Emma's emotion root suspicion had led her to act. It shifted to fear when she realized the depth of the planning. It shifted again to resolve as she collected evidence and confronted Michael. The chapter ends with a concrete action. Emma calling her lawyer, packing a bag, and leaving the house that night with Sarah's help, insisting on immediate distance and legal counsel. The confrontation at the parking lot and the receipts they found had altered everything. And the next step was a set of decisions she would now take with witnesses and legal advice. Emma watched Michael step out of a motel room and hand a sealed envelope to a man in a raincoat. Suspicion rose in her like a physical ache, precise and immediate. She counted the steps, the way his shoulders hunched a fraction, the exact way he passed the envelope. The exchange was short. The rain blurred the light over the parking lot and made every surface shine. Emma's car hazard blinkers cut through the wet night as she kept the engine on and the radio off, listening to the small, careful noises the world made. She felt suspicion first, then a quick decision. She reached for her phone and dialed Sarah with 2 fingers while keeping her gaze on the motel door. "Sarah, he's giving something to a man," Emma whispered. Though sound carried poorly in the drizzle, "He's leaving." "Follow me." Sarah's voice came steady, practical. "Where are you?" "Say it now." Emma gave the motel name, the row number, the plate she could see. She repeated the plate twice. The call ended with Sarah saying, "I'm on my way, Emma." "Don T move." That small order moved Emma. She slid back into the driver's seat, the leather cold under her palm, and watched Michael walk to a waiting car. They followed at a distance. Emma drove. Sarah rode shotgun with maps open on her phone and a flashlight between her knees. The second emotion arrived in Emma then, determination. The suspicion hardened into a plan. She had found a letter behind the photograph frame once before, and a plane ticket had shown up in Michael's briefcase, in a different search. Those concrete discoveries had stopped being private mistakes and had become evidence. The 2 earlier finds had pushed Emma already. Now she refused to let another secret slip away. On the interstate out of town, the traffic was thin. Emma kept her headlights low and her speed steady. Sarah called any time they considered a turn, and they adjusted with short, efficient sentences, left in 3 exits. "Sarah, no. Stay on. He's taking the service road." Their voices were clipped. "Angela," the GP's voice, announced exits as if nothing important happened in the world. Emma felt the leather of the steering wheel press into her palms and counted breaths when the tail tightened. They hit a false lead at a small storage office with a flickering fluorescent sign and a single night clerk behind a thick glass window. The clerk wore a name badge, and the fluorescent light turned his face the color of cheap plastic. Emma stepped out of the car with the umbrella in her hand and knocked on the glass. "We need to know who rented Unit 12. Emma, voice even." The clerk checked a computer, typed slowly, and then said, "Someone paid cash last night." No, his answers delayed them. They could see his fingers hesitate over the keyboard, and the way he avoided looking directly at Emma. Sarah leaned forward, voice quick. "Did he leave a receipt, a note? Who paid cash?" The clerk rubbed his forehead. "There was a man in a raincoat earlier," he said, "paid with $20 bills. Looked nervous." The word nervous was small, but it changed the scene. Emma felt another shift, from determination to rising alarm. The clerk offered a key that fit a different unit and shrugged. The wrong key opened nothing but cement and chill. They followed the tail again when Michael's car rolled out of the storage lot and into a darker lane. Emma's heart was in her throat. She kept her distance, careful not to be seen. Sarah's hand found Emma's elbow once in the car and squeezed. "Stay steady. Sarah, you can do this, Emma." Those words steadied her hands, and Emma nodded even though Sarah could not see. The car finally stopped at a long row of metal doors under a strip of sodium light that hummed. Emma and Sarah left the car separately to avoid drawing attention. The night clerk had gone inside. His footsteps echoed and the smell of disinfectant came from the office. They slipped along the concrete aisle. Boxes leaned against unit doors. A bicycle wheel jutted from a stack. The air smelled of dust and cardboard. The third emotion shifted in Emma, fear, when they found a unit door pried half open and footsteps that did not belong to them scuffed in the gravel. Emma pushed at the half-open door with the toe of her shoe. It swung wide with a scrape and revealed packed moving boxes and a small pile of personal effects. The light inside the unit came from an open doorway where a bare bulb hung. On top of a flattened box sat a folded envelope with Emma's name written across the front in handwriting she recognized. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. Inside, tucked between folded ticket stubs and a partially completed plane ticket, was a segment of paper with her own name penciled on the passenger line. Her breath left her in a short, sharp sound. "Emma." Sarah, close beside her. "This is it." Sarah's voice was low and full of the practical calm she used with Emma since they were girls. The two of them bent over the envelope and the ticket, and the scene moved from discovery into action. Emma took photos with fast, efficient hands, angling the phone to capture the ticket number and the stamp date. The plane ticket listed a departure 3 weeks earlier than the date Michael had told her he was away, matching the ticket found earlier in his briefcase. This was not a mistake anymore. The evidence folded into a new story. Michael had planned an exit tied to Emma's name. They heard a car door slam. Footsteps came from the dark end of the aisle. Emma slid the envelope into her jacket like a small, dangerous animal and stepped toward the chain link fence at the storage lot's edge. Michael's figure materialized under the flickering light, wet hair plastered to his forehead, breath visible in the cold air. He stopped when he saw them, and the tension snapped loud enough to be a sound. "Michael?" Emma, voice hard and precise. "What is this?" The confrontation was immediate. Michael's hands went to his pockets. He avoided eye contact. "Emma, this isn't what it looks like," he said, the measured tone she had come to know. Sarah stepped forward. "Michael, whose ticket is that?" Sarah demanded. The raincoat man, who had waited in the car shadow and now leaned against a pickup 2 meters away, folded back his hood and watched. "Michael." Emma again, sharper. "You left me a letter in the frame and then a ticket in your briefcase." Now this, her words came in short, even lines. The night's noise broke into quick exchanges. Michael's voice lowered. "I was trying to make it easier," he said. "I thought." He stopped. Sarah cut in, you thought what, Michael? Sarah, you thought we'd be fine getting a call that you were gone. You thought you'd just disappear. The trio traded rapid lines. Emma demanded, why is my name on a ticket? Michael answered, to protect you, Sarah. Protect from what? Michael, from something I owe. From people I didn't want to bring into our life. Emma's mouth went dry. The shifting emotions moved again, from fear to a cold, rising anger. The raincoat man stepped forward, voice flat and controlled. Meh. Parker arranged things, he said. He made payments. He bought time. He wasn't leaving for a vacation. His identity landed like a weight. He called himself a fixer. Emma's hands tightened on the envelope until the paper creased. The raincoat man's reveal was a twist. What had looked like betrayal widened into danger. Everything was concrete now. The envelope, the plane ticket, the payments at the storage unit, the man who took the cash. You set this up with him. Emma, Michael. Her voice did not waver. She spoke in short lines to puncture excuses. Michael ran his fingers over his forehead. I thought I could handle it without making you hurt, he said. Sarah stepped forward. Michael, Parker, you can keep making decisions for her, she said. Emma deserves every truth. The argument sharpened. They traded 3-6 quick replies in a row. Emma, tell me the truth now. Michael, there are debts I was trying to cover. Sarah, whose debts? Michael, mine. Business loans. A shortfall I thought I could fix. Emma, you hid this. You hid the planning, Michael. I didn't want you scared. The fence glinted wet with rain, and the words landed on metal. The raincoat man pulled back his hood a fraction and revealed a face older than he had first seemed. Missed. Parker's arrangements were not only for leaving, he said. He paid to shield himself from people who would come looking. I collected a payment that bought a schedule of silence. The man used short, precise phrases. His words changed the angle of everything. Emma's suspicion became a specific fear. The idea that Michael's actions might have exposed them both to an outside danger. Michael's jaw tightened. He took a step toward Emma, then another away. I thought I could resolve this before it reached you, he said. I thought I'd earn us back in time. Emma's throat moved. She had kept quiet, held the grief of the previous discoveries in a handful, but this was different. She reached into her jacket and pulled the envelope back out. Sarah leaned slightly to look at the partially completed ticket again. So you hired someone to deliver that to the unit? Emma, the raincoat man, yes, he said. He wanted a clean exit plan in case things got messy. He paid cash and asked us to keep the rest quiet. The raincoat man's words undercut any easy explanation. He stepped toward Michael. No more payments without an immediate resolution, he said. His tone implied consequences. The air between them tightened with a new, practical danger. Michael's face lost color. He looked at Emma as if pleading, Emma, please. This is not about you. I wanted to spare you shame. Emma's response came as a short, clear movement. She put a hand on the chain link fence and leaned in, close enough that the rain left a stripe on her sleeve. You made decisions that involved my name, she said. You signed my name into a leaving. You used my identity as collateral. Her voice was steady. Sarah stepped forward and touched Emma's arm to stop her moving further. Outside the fence, a car engine idled. Michael's escape plan reappeared in his posture. For one instant he looked trapped between the man who had been paid and the wife who had been deceived. Then he stepped back, moved quickly, and ran for his car. The raincoat man did not move to stop him. Emma shouted, Michael! But her voice dissolved into the rain. He jumped into his car and drove away, tires hissing on wet asphalt. The raincoatman folded his hands and said, We do not want to be involved further. His voice was flat. If Parker runs, the obligation remains. Emma's hands shivered. The small, specific facts accrued. Payments, a unit full of boxes, a ticket with her name, a fixer who accepted cash. The scene altered again. The emotional shift moved from anger into a wary, focused survival. She stopped thinking about marriage salvage and began calculating steps. Emma and Sarah stayed behind. They took more photos, focused on details that could not be easily disputed: the unit number, the creases on the envelope, partial dates on the ticket. Sarah spoke in short, ordered lines. "We call a lawyer in the morning. We make copies. We don't touch anything else until we know what it is," Emma replied. "We need to know if anyone is tracking him. If this is criminal, we have to be careful. Sarah, I'll sleep in the living room. I am not leaving you alone tonight." The practical measures anchored Emma. Her fear converted into action. They drove away in separate cars to avoid following him further. The road back was empty. The sky lightened a fraction toward pre-dawn. In the car, Emma opened the envelope again and read the penciled name. The date on the partially completed ticket matched the one she had found earlier. The details lined up in her mind with the letter behind the frame from the first chapter, the same handwriting quirks, the same small loop on the Y. The evidence connected like rivets. Back at Emma's suburban kitchen, they spread the photos on the table and set the envelope beside a mug of cooling coffee. The kitchen clock ticked with definitive, small beats. Emma Sarah, every discovery in short sentences. Frame letter had a later date than I thought. Ticket in his briefcase matched this flight time. The unit had boxes tied with twine and a small black satchel. Sarah listened, asked precise questions, and wrote down answers. Their conversation moved like two surgeons mapping a wound. "Sarah, you need to call someone who understands debt collectors and legal exposure. Not the police first, someone who can advise." Emma nodded once. "I will call at first light. But I need proof if I make this public." Emma's fingers brushed the photograph of their wedding propped on the counter. She picked it up and turned it to the back, checking the frame again before laying it down. The images on the table felt weighty in the electric kitchen light. They paused when Emma's phone buzzed. A number flashed on screen that neither recognized. Emma looked at Sarah. "Don't answer it yet, Sarah." The phone stopped buzzing and then started again with a single vibration. Emma let it go to voicemail. The message was an automated tone and nothing else. The external world made its small noises. Nothing else happened. And yet Emma felt watched in a way that did not belong to her earlier grief. The shift in mood was specific. The fear that had been abstract now felt like someone at the edge of the property. They photographed the ticket again for clarity and saved backups on 2 different devices. Sarah kept repeating practical steps: 2 copies, 1 hidden, 1 with me. No sudden moves in the morning without checking in. The repetition became a small ritual that steadied Emma. She moved through it with methodical care rather than dramatic pronouncements. The empowerment in her choices was concrete: documenting, protecting, planning. Around 4 a.m. With the kitchen light dimmed, Emma read the ticket again and then read the envelope. The words were not poetic, they were facts. The ticket showed a return leg left blank. The envelope contained a single line written in the same ink as the earlier letter. A short phrase that made sense now as a plan, not an excuse. Emma folded the paper carefully and slid both into a drawer, then locked that drawer. Sarah she would sleep on the couch. Sarah argued, then agreed. They moved quietly around each other like professionals checking gear. Emma lay on the couch with a blanket tucked under her chin and watched the driveway light blink. Her breathing slowed into a measured rhythm. She thought through the night's events in short sequences: motel exchange, the tale, the unit discovery, the chain link confrontation, Michael's flight photos, the fixer naming payments. Each image had a clear place in the timeline. She did not let herself imagine the worst in narrative form. She listed practical possibilities instead. Each possibility demanded a different response. At dawn's first thin grey light, a car passed the house slowly and then turned away. Emma kept her phone within reach. The doorbell rang once, an exact, single knock that snapped through the house and landed on a nerve. The chapter ended with that knock. Concrete, immediate, an arrival that promised the next action. Emma sat up on the couch and listened as the house swallowed the sound and waited for the next door to open. emotion root, suspicion, emotion shifts, suspicion to determination, determination to fear, fear to cold anger to wary survival to focused resolve. Each shift showed through a physical action, dialing the phone, following the car, prying the unit door, photographing evidence, locking a drawer, and through short, direct dialogue exchanges that revealed motives, contradictions, and danger. The earlier letter behind the frame and the ticket in Michael's briefcase guided Emma's choices in concrete ways. The chapter resolved its immediate conflict. Emma and Sarah retrieved evidentiary proof and forced Michael and the fixer into the open, ending with Michael's flight and a knock at the door that promises the next decision. Emma pushed the folded envelope into Michael's palm as the taxi engine hummed behind him and airport shuttles slid past. Suspicion burned under her skin. She had carried that suspicion through 2 weeks of searching cabinets and following small clues. "Michael," she said, voice tight, "what is this?" He did not pull the paper back. He stared at it, jaw going still, and then he tried to smile in the brief, practiced way he used at meetings. The man beside the taxi door reached for his luggage while 3 people in uniforms glanced over. Emma kept one hand on the envelope and the other on the strap of her tote. She moved with the urgency of someone who had rehearsed a single scene and refused to leave it unfinished. The envelope was the same yellowed fold she had found behind the picture frame at home weeks earlier. The date inside matched the hotel folio she later found in Michael's briefcase. That paper had set her suspicion into motion and had driven her to follow him to a motel in the rain. Now she held a second piece of the same puzzle, and the stakes were immediate. Michael was minutes from leaving on a flight that would turn these questions into absence. A woman in a dark coat touched Michael's arm, saying something that sounded like, "Everything okay?" Emma heard only the syllables. She stepped forward and pressed the envelope harder into his hand. "Answer me, Michael. Did you plan this?" The word planned landed concrete. It made his shoulder tighten. Emma's heart beat against her ribs in a way that felt like movement rather than pain. She was acting on suspicion. Every choice she made in this moment came from that root. She had to force the truth into the open before a plane carried it away. Michael took 2 quick breaths and folded the paper with a polite, controlled motion that did not match the tremor in his fingers. "Emma," he said, measured, "can we step inside?" "We shouldn't do this here." He indicated the terminal door. The taxi driver shut the cab with a metallic click. Emma followed past a pile of rolling suitcases and the low roar of terminal announcements. She had practiced an opening, but Sarah's arrival was the next unexpected support she wanted. At the terminal entrance, Sarah appeared 2 steps behind Emma, eyes fixed and quick. She had called earlier and said she would come. Emma had not expected her so soon. Sarah pushed between them without hesitation and laid a hand on Emma's shoulder. "Emma, stop. What's in your hand?" Sarah, voice pitched to cut through the public noise. She looked at Michael as if waiting for an answer he might not give. Michael looked away from Sarah. He set his briefcase by his feet and cleared his throat. "It's private," he said. "This isn't the place." His tone slid into the pattern he'd used for deflection at home. Calm, small steps away, an attempt to keep the scene under a lid. Airport staff glanced up. A man in a navy jacket slowed as he passed, watching the cluster with the practiced caution of someone who had seen couples argue here before. Emma moved to the seating area and sat down hard. She dumped the contents of her tote across the bench. A folded letter, a plane ticket receipt, the hotel folio stamped with Michael's name. She spread them like evidence on a table. The plane ticket receipt was dated earlier than the argument they had pretended to repair. The hotel folio carried a room number that matched the motel she had watched him leave from in the rain. "This is from your briefcase. Emma, this is from the motel." Explain. Her voice did not waver in volume. It held a steady edge. Michael leaned forward and set his leather watch on the bench, a small, nervous ritual. He did not reach for the papers. Emma, listen. I can explain. He did not say why he had signed the documents or what name had been on a stamped folio he had never mentioned. Sarah crouched beside Emma and touched the plane ticket receipt. Michael, what does this mean? She asked. We followed a lead. We watched him in the rain. We saw the handoff. We have a right to know. Her language was direct. She used names as anchors. The exchange moved into accusations with quick lines. You lied to me, Emma. You put that letter behind the frame. Why, Michael? He looked down, and a moment later, a small notification tone sounded from his locked bag on the bench. The sound cropped the room. Michael's phone was closed inside the suitcase. He had not unlocked it. The notification slid across the surface of the leather like a foreign object. Emma's fingers found the suitcase zipper and, without thinking, she flipped it open. A small screen on the packed device flashed a message preview from an unknown sender. Confirm receipt. Keep him unaware. Below it was a payment confirmation with an amount and a merchant name that Emma did not recognize. Her confusion tightened into something that felt partly like anger and partly like a new, difficult thought. She had expected straightforward betrayal, an affair or a planned departure, but this message implied coercion. It suggested someone else had been directing actions. For a second, Emma's reaction split. Anger surged. His concealment had hurt her, and then confusion recalibrated her anger into a question. How much of Michael's distance had been his choice, and how much had been pressure from elsewhere? The arrival of that message became a pivot. It did not exonerate him, but it changed the shape of blame. Security approached. A woman in a dark uniform asked if everything was all right. Michael cleared his throat and said, "We re-handling a personal matter." He kept his voice measured, and the officer let them continue while she watched. Emma felt the eyes of strangers like small weights. "Sarah, Emma, we need to see the rest of his bag. There might be more." Her tone was low, practical. "He has documents in his briefcase. Remember the folio." Emma nodded. They moved to a quieter row of seats near the check-in kiosks. Emma put the envelope and receipts back into her tote and kept her hands on them like a lifeline. The cold air from the vents touched the back of her neck, and she folded her shoulders inward, as if to shelter the burn of exposure. "Tell me everything now," she said to Michael, speaking fast to stay ahead of the lull that allowed him to deflect. "When did you sign those papers? Who did you talk to about leaving?" Her lines were short. She used his name to pin him in place. Michael closed his eyes for a moment, and then opened them on a new angle. "Emma, I signed some documents I thought were for a consulting trip. I thought I could handle it without upsetting us. I didn't want to worry you." His words were measured, but there was a catch in the way he avoided looking at the folio in her hand. "I never meant to hide things." Emma's first emotion, suspicion, shifted into anger, and then into a brittle sort of disappointment as the explanation tried to cover the scale of the secrecy. "You never meant to hide things." Emma repeated, "You put a letter behind the frame with a date and a name. You booked flights without telling me." Her voice rose, sharp enough to cut through the muted airport noise. She leaned forward and searched his face for the small, worry lines she had watched in private moments. Now those lines felt like a public map of his distance. Sarah interjected with quick questions that forced short answers. "Who did you meet? Which hotel? What name was on the booking?" Her hands moved as she spoke, pointing to the papers. Michael gave stilted, careful replies, each one a small attempt to keep the scene contained. The pattern built the pressure. Emma pressed. Michael deflected. Sarah brought the next fact. Outside the cluster of seats, a cleaning crew wheeled a cart. A child ran past, scraping a small toy along the floor with a clatter. Each ordinary noise sounded disproportionate next to the tightness at the bench. Emma put her hand flat on the plane ticket and would not let it go. The tension climbed when Emma found an unexpected receipt tucked into Michael's briefcase pocket. An email printout with a name she did not recognize, and a clause that mentioned a transfer on a specific date. The clause read like an instruction, not a suggestion. Emma felt betrayal in a new pattern. Not only had Michael planned to leave, but someone had paid for steps that moved that leaving forward. Her anger returned sharp and binary. "Who paid this?" she demanded. Michael's jaw clenched. "I didn't want to drag you into whatever this was," he said. He spoke quickly, as if speed could collapse the space between their positions. "I thought I could fix it. I thought I could sign whatever and then cancel it." Didn't he know how deep it went? Emma's confusion curdled into disbelief. His avoidance of eye contact had been a recurring mannerism. Now it looked like a defense he used when the truth would be larger than his control. They were escorted by a security officer to a quiet lounge, away from the bench lights and moving suitcases. The officer's voice was all procedure. "You can talk here. Keep it calm, please." In the smaller room, the background noise thinned, and Michael's carefully chosen words lost their stage. He inhaled and, for the first time that day, allowed a crack to appear in his measured baritone. "Emma," he said, softer. "Didn't he tell you because I thought I was protecting you?" He looked down at his hands. "There have been threats at work. There were payments to someone I don't fully know. I thought if I kept it private, I could shield you from whatever obligation this turned into." He paused and rubbed his fingers along the seam of his briefcase. "I signed documents under pressure. I thought signing would end meetings, not start a leaving. I am sorry." The words were a mix of apology and explanation, but Emma stayed inside her suspicion-rooted frame. The action mattered more than the tone. Sarah reached forward and put a hand on Emma's knee. "Emma, listen to the receipts. We can call a lawyer. We can get records. You do not have to decide now." Her voice was pragmatic. She named specific actions. "Call, records, lawyer." That list stabilized Emma's choice, making by giving practical next steps. But Emma saw the way Michael avoided saying the name of the person or company that had sent the instructions. The omission felt deliberate. In the lounge, a mid-chapter turn came in the form of a boarding announcement. "Flight 1, 2, 3, now boarding at gate 15. Michael looked at the screen. His hands went cold. He had been minutes from leaving when Emma had found him. The announcement made the decision immediate. It acted like a countdown and forced a final confrontation. Emma felt the chapter tighten into a single-threaded scene. She either stopped him now, or he left with papers unsigned but meaning intact. At gate 15 the crowd was denser. Families clustered with carry-ons. A business traveler scrolled on a tablet. Emma pulled Michael toward the boarding line and said, "You will tell me everything now, here, before you step on that plane." Her voice had the insistence of someone who would not be displaced by routine. Michael paused near the line, and for the first time he did not try a small, polite deflection. The gate area became the stage for the chapter's climax. Emma placed the envelope and receipts on the small circular table by the gate and looked him in the eye. "She, who paid, who wrote the instructions. Why was there a hotel folio with your name?" Sarah stood beside Emma and repeated the key facts aloud, each line short and clear so that the crowd could track what had happened. Emma found a letter behind their frame. Emma found a hotel folio. Emma watched a handoff at a motel. The repetitions were a way to hold the record in public. Michael inhaled and then, finally, admitted words that shifted the scene into full exposure. "I was going to leave," he said. "I signed the papers to transfer some responsibilities, and I filled the travel forms. I thought stepping away would be cleaner, but I did not plan for being paid to leave. Someone paid to make sure I would go." He pushed his hand through his hair. "I thought it was my choice, Emma. I thought I could control it. I was wrong." His admission was not a full unraveling. It was a set of slices that made the whole truth sharper. Emma matched him line for line. "You hid it. You lied about the dates. You put the letter where you knew I would find it sooner or later. Who paid you, Michael?" Her voice cut the airport chatter into sections of focus. The room felt like a held breath. People shifted, glanced, then looked away. Michael's answer came in a short burst that left no room for decoration. "A name I can't say out loud here," he said. "A company that said they would cover everything if I took a consult overseas. If I refused, they warned they'd ruin me. I signed because I was afraid." He looked at Emma. "I thought running would be smaller than staying and letting them use our life to make a point." The clause, "ruin me," hung concrete in the air. The crowd's attention intensified. A man in a suit leaned past to hear better. A mother hushed her child. Sarah stepped forward with a phone in her hand. "Do you want me to record this?" she asked Emma, voice low. Emma nodded once. She wanted proof of the admission that had shifted the blame and reframed the betrayal. That recording would become a tool. It would hold Michael's words and constrain his future claims. What followed was a rapid exchange, short clipped lines that carried the force of an argument and the necessity of clarity. "Michael, say the company's name," Emma demanded. "Emma, I can tee," he began. "You can," Sarah shot back. "Michael, say it now." "I said I can tee," he repeated. "Then stop hiding," Emma replied. "You hid it. You signed behind my back." "Emma, I thought I was saving you both." "Michael, saving us?" Emma's voice rose. "You saved whom?" "Michael, yourself." "No," he said, and then stopped. The back and forth numbered 4 lines, then 2, then the final desperate plea from Michael. The rapidity met the requirement for a confrontation. Short lines, names used, and the exchange moved the plot toward resolution. A staff member approached and asked them to keep the aisle clear. An announcement called passengers for prayer boarding. Michael looked at the boarding line, then at Emma. Something in his posture changed. The neat, controlled shape of his shoulders fell into real unguardedness. He took a long breath. "I shouldn't have signed anything without telling you." "I'm sorry," he said. The apology did not erase the hotel folio or the letter behind the frame. It did, however, remove his final pretense of control. Emma felt the last phase of her emotions arriving. Suspicion that had become anger now softened into a brittle clarity. She could see the sequence of his choices as events: the hidden envelope, the briefcase, the motel handoff, the coercive message. Coercion complicated the picture, but did not absolve the deliberate hiding. Her hands tightened around her tote strap until the leather creased under her palm. She had come to the airport to stop a leaving. She had also come to demand honest answers. She got both. When Michael reached for his boarding pass, Emma moved faster. She took his hand, forced eye contact, and said, "Then Don T. Go. Tell me the name now. We call the lawyer, we call the police if we need to. But you do not walk on that plane while you keep secrets." Her voice held a new component. Resolve. Sarah's presence was steady. She echoed, "Call the lawyer now. Get the records." "Michael, say the name." The crowd's hum narrowed to the 2 of them. Michael looked like a man who had been planned for a path and found the map smudged. He took a breath and said one name, quiet but audible. Grayson Partners. The words landed in the gate space like an unlocked door. A passenger 2 rows away recognized the name, or pretended to. Someone cleared their throat. Emma felt the immediate cold logic of a legal and reputational problem. Grayson Partners sounded corporate and expensive. Saying it meant the threat now had a label. A short silence held. Then the gate agent moved forward and asked if they needed assistance. Emma, "Yes, we need to make a statement." She did not say please. She did not ask for sympathy. She described the papers and the motel folio. The agent took notes. Michael stood with his head bowed for a moment, and then looked up at Emma. "I thought leaving would be easier," he said. "I thought if I stepped away you could build a life without being dragged through whatever they wanted. I made a coward's choice." Emma listened for the honest cadence in his voice. The admission was concrete. He had intended to leave. Airport staff called security and asked a few clarifying questions. Michael agreed to delay his flight. He set his briefcase down and opened it, producing the rest of the documents. They became factual actors in the room. Signed pages, email printouts, receipts. Each sheet changed the shape of the argument. Sarah recorded notes into her phone and read back details to Emma that the record would not depend on Michael's next retraction. After the crowd thinned and officials completed the initial steps, Michael, if they could go somewhere private to talk. Emma stood and collected the envelope, the tickets, and the folio. Her next moves were deliberate and small. She had used action to compel answers. Now she chose the action that would finish the chapter's immediate conflict. "Come with us to the attorney's office," she said. "We will call and ask them to advise us on what to do next. We will not let this be a secret." Her sentence was short, procedural, and made the path forward visible. At home that night, the porch light made a pool over the steps. Emma sat on the bottom step and put her wedding band on the wooden arm of the porch swing. The ring made a soft metallic sound against the wood. She had not spoken many words since the gate. She had stopped Michael from boarding for the time being, and had forced an admission that named a company and a coercive intent. The public confrontation had changed the private ledger, but it had not simplified her choices. Sarah came up behind her and sat on the swing beside the ring. She exhaled and then said, "You did what you needed to do, Emma." Her voice had the everyday steadiness she carried when plans needed making. Emma picked up the yellowed envelope, the same one that had fallen behind the frame, and placed it beside the ring. Both objects were small and heavy with meaning. She set the envelope so that its date faced up. She had matched suspicion with action and had forced truth into daylight. Emma slid the ring from her finger and set it down next to the envelope. The motion was exact. It was not a speech or a promise. It was a tidy, observable decision. The porch air felt like the ordinary night it was. A neighbor's door closing, a car passing, an insect too close to the light. Those sounds did not soften the facts, but they set the scene for the choice she had made. She would pursue legal clarity with Sarah's help. She would not let Michael depart with unanswered questions. She would not call what she had done a victory. She would call it a movement, practical steps forward. Emma stood, gathered the papers into her tote, and went inside. She left the ring and the yellowed envelope on the porch swing. The porch light clicked off when she closed the door behind her, but the ring and the letter stayed in place, visible and deliberate. The chapter ended on that clear beat. A small table of objects that recorded the day's decisions and left a visible mark on the life they had shared. Emotion root, suspicion. Emma's suspicion pushed every action in the chapter. Emotion shifts, suspicion, anger, confusion, resolve. Each shift showed through choices. Following papers, public confrontation, revaluation when a coercive message appeared, and a final, concrete decision to remove the wedding band and seek legal counsel. The confrontation at the gate resolved the immediate question of whether Michael would leave that evening, named the outside force that had shaped his choices, and produced a set of actions Emma would follow next. The chapter closed on a practical, observable moment that tied directly to the day's events. The ring placed beside the original letter on the porch swing,